Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Dr. Jennifer Stephan, who's the Dean of Academic Advising and Undergraduate Studies in the School of Engineering at Tufts University. Dr. Stephan, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I am well, John. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm excited for our conversation.
Likewise, and I'm really excited because not only are you the Dean of Academic Advising, but you also have 3 daughters that went to Tufts University, each studied a different degree program. So as a parent, Dr. Stephan, what factors would you say influenced their decision to choose Tufts University, and how did the university support them in their individual academic and even their personal journeys?
Oh, what a great question. Yes, I am a proud Tufts parent, and it's important to say that my oldest daughter will be 29 in December. So this was several years ago that we were going through the college application process. And I have my PhD in electrical and computer engineering, as does my husband. And other parents out there will chuckle when they hear me say that my daughters did not want to hear from us that maybe they should consider engineering, because no one wants to hear that from their mom and dad. And my husband works at MIT, and I'm at the time I was at Wellesley College teaching computer science. But we could look at my oldest daughter, at least, and see that we thought she would probably be an engineer, or had a lot of the traits that you might expect an engineer would have in the way she approached problem solving, what she liked, what she was good at, et cetera. So at the top of her list were schools that allowed flexibility for moving between engineering and other academic disciplines in case she found her way to engineering. And she did not apply to the School of Engineering at Tufts. She applied to the School of Arts and Sciences. And again, this was before I was at Tufts. That's very important. As a mother, Tufts was hers first. And she, I always feel like I need to honor that. I later moved to Tufts after she had finished her first year. But again, Tufts rose to the top of her list because even though there's a School of Engineering and a School of Arts and Sciences, and they are distinct, and you do apply to one, there are very flexible pathways between the two schools. We call it an internal transfer process, and that's actually a process that I now oversee. Students who want to move from the School of Arts and Sciences into the School of Engineering. We have about 100 or so that come forward every year and ask to make an internal transfer. Not all end up doing that, but there's quite a robust process for that. And we like to say that we have low walls between the schools. So it's very easy for students to experiment and try out other academic disciplines. And this is not just true for the School of Arts and Sciences and Engineering. It's also true for the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, which is actually part of the School of Arts and Sciences at Tufts. And so my oldest daughter did apply to the School of Arts and Sciences and later internally transfer into the School of Engineering. We provide a lot of support at Tufts to help students discern their academic direction and major and academic interests. Just this week or this month right now, we have Majors Month, which is a whole month of activities to help students sort through learn about the different majors. And in fact, yesterday from 10 till 3, we had a major academic fair, which I womaned the booth from 1:30 to 3, talking to students who were wondering about the School of Engineering. And in the School of Engineering specifically, early in September, we had 2 weeks of Engineering Discovery Week. So, and then I've talked a lot about my oldest daughter, but the same things that I just said to you are true for my youngest daughters, why they ultimately ended up choosing Tufts. You've heard about my oldest daughter. My middle daughter applied to the combined degree program between the School of Museum of Fine Arts and the School of Arts and Sciences, which is a 5-year program, a BFA degree and a BA or BS degree. And specifically, it was the only art school she applied to. And part of the reason it ended up being so high on her list is as an art school, it has very few requirements, doesn't have course requirements, so very flexible curriculum, no grades. A process where you have an evaluation at the end of every semester to help you. It's like almost a mini defense in, it's called review boards in a PhD program where you talk about your work throughout the whole semester and you get feedback from faculty and peers about your direction. After she spent a year in art school, she decided she wanted to roll out and just do only the BA/BS program, which she ended up doing and graduating with a major in film and media studies and a major in sociology. And then my youngest is a senior right now at Tufts. Again, really appreciated she didn't know what she wanted to study when she went to Tufts. So we really appreciated the fact that Tufts is a place that supports students to learn what they want to study. One last thing I'll say, because I know I've said a lot on this question and we have a lot of territory to cover, a lot of ground. 50% of the students who matriculate at Tufts University into the School of Engineering do not know which engineering discipline they want to pursue. So it is a place that supports students who are undecided and also undecided in engineering, unlike many institutions where students might be directly admitted to a major and can't change their mind later. So that's one of the really powerful features of Tufts. It's a great match for undecided students.
Well, Dr. Stephan, you gave us a lot to consider there, and I know a lot of parents are very interested in hearing more about the flexibility between majors because, as you pointed out, there are so many students that come to a school like Tufts University undecided, or they might want to change their majors. So I was curious, how does your team help students who are considering changing their major or perhaps even adding a minor? And how common is this at Tufts University?
It's extremely common. As I mentioned in my earlier response, we do not admit directly to a major. We do admit students to a school, but we do have pathways to move between the school, and the pathways are well defined, and they are defined by, if you will, an invite-in criteria, meaning it's not a high bar. It's not limited in number. It's not limited. You only have to have A pluses, nothing like that. It's clear. And in the School of Engineering, you just need to stay on track with math and science and engineering degree requirements, because of course we want students to graduate on time with to be admitted a C minus or better into the school. And so it is not, and again, we don't limit the number of seats, if you will. So there are clear pathways, but beyond that, we have programming. And I mentioned again in my earlier response, we have Majors Month. That is across both schools, arts and sciences and engineering. In engineering, we had Engineering Discovery Week early this fall for incoming new students as they arrived. In the spring, syncing up with the National E-Week. In February, we have E-Week, which we have activities that are designed to help students learn about the different engineering disciplines. We have, as part of our orientation programming, a team in the School of Engineering of engineering ambassadors, 2 upper class students from each discipline. There are 6 departments, academic departments in the School of Engineering offering 16 degrees. We say we offer degrees, not majors, because we offer an entire degree that the student needs to fulfill to the requirements of in order to earn the degree. And we have 2 representatives from each department that are upper class peers. We call them engineering ambassadors. They're available to help students with questions during orientation. They run a panel where they talk about their disciplines, why they chose their disciplines. During the summer before first year students arrive, we have a weekly engineering newsletter that we push out that profiles the different academic disciplines. So the list goes on. And of course, I have an academic advising team of about, there are 6 of us who support students in these types of questions. And we have a lot of tools at Career Services to help students decide and learn about different majors. So there is a lot of support. I think parents who have a student who's undecided should be looking for schools that have curricular structures, a curricular flexibility, if you will, structures at the university that support flexibility, and then guidance from those people like myself who can help the student with programming and conversations.
Well, that's terrific. You made it clear that there are clear pathways. The School of Engineering has 6 departments with 16 degrees, not majors, 16 degrees, as you put it. So I was also curious, how does the School of Engineering at Tufts integrate interdisciplinary studies? And can you share other examples of how engineering students might collaborate with other departments on campus?
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned, Tufts is a university with multiple schools. We have a School of Museum Fine Arts, and we have a School of Arts and Sciences, and a School of Engineering. This is on the undergraduate level. Of course, there are graduate schools, School of Medicine, etc. I'm the dean of undergraduate. academic advising and studies. So I focus on undergrads, and I think that's your focus as well.
Yes.
And our students can freely move between these schools in the sense of taking classes at any school. They are housed with each other freely, unlike some universities where there may be students housed in different campuses or have academically themed housing. That's not the case at Tufts. Again, I mentioned there are pathways between them. But in the School of Engineering, students can take a second major, or adopt a second major, work towards a second major, or a minor, or more than one minor, as long as they have the bandwidth to do so, in the sense that I always say to students, when you pursue a second major, you often think about what you're getting, but you sometimes don't think about what you're sacrificing to
Hmm.
have that second major, which could be depth in your major, could be a thesis, could be study abroad, could be deep engagement with extracurricular activities, could be getting into Boston once in a while, could be sleep,
Hmm.
health, all these things. So generally, we don't encourage a second major, but students do it all the time. And it is demanding in the School of Engineering, not as demanding in the School of Arts and Sciences, because the curricular requirements are far more flexible. But I do have engineers who have a second major. I have engineers who don't necessarily have a second major or minor, but just do significant coursework in other schools. I have some of my students go down to the SMFA to use their maker spaces.
Hmm.
The engineers and the artists are the makers on Tufts campus. And there are courses on welding and jewelry making and guitar and dulcimer making. And they have amazing maker spaces. So that's something that I'd like to mention. And generally, Tufts attracts students, engineers who are, if you will, whole engineers. They're very well rounded. Some institutions, technical institutions, might attract students who are far more STEM focused. So, in general, at Tufts, our engineers are artists, musicians, political
Hmm.
scientists. The list goes on and on. Amazing, amazing students. It's an honor to work with them and learn from them, and to encourage them at this stage in their life as they're building their young identities.
Absolutely. And, it definitely sounds like there's something for everyone, and it's an amazing student body. And I mention that because Tufts has an impressive 96% retention rate, which, of course, is one of the highest in the country, indicating that a significant majority of freshmen, of course, return after that first year. So, Dr. Stephan, what aspects of the Tufts experience, both academically and socially, do you believe contribute to this high retention rate? And how do these elements foster the overall development and success of students at Tufts University?
I like to say that Tufts is a Goldilocks school, in the sense that it's the right size. It's not too small. It's not too big. It's near a city, but not too urban.
Hmm.
It offers basically everything that an undergraduate student might want in terms of academics, with some limitations. Of course, we don't have an undergraduate business school, but there is the Gordon Institute in the School of Engineering, which offers courses on management and leadership. So, not going to get a finance major, but you can get coursework and minors in some of those other business oriented disciplines. And the other thing I would say, the reason why it's a Goldilocks school, it's also got a nice balance in terms of academic rigor and yet being happy. So the students at Tufts work very hard, of course, but it's not an overwhelmingly stressful culture, as can sometimes be the case at some
Right,
schools.
right.
Again, I'm not going to say that I don't have students who are stressed. Of course, I have students who are stressed, but it's not this overwhelming campus ethos of stress. So it's a really nice balance of academic rigor, happy, well-adjusted students, nice, kind students. I would say that that's a definite value of the institution, is, if you will, for lack of a better word, good kids. And maybe kids is not a respectful term, but I hope
Hmm.
that the audience understands what I mean by that. Good people. And what I would also say is that I had been at Wellesley College for 21 years before I moved to
Wow.
Tufts University. And part of the reason I moved to Tufts University was I had, if you will, outgrown the small place that Wellesley is. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. But I had kind of, done the things I wanted to do and achieved the things that I hoped to achieve, and wanted to go to a place with a bit more complexity. So moving to a university, offered that. And of course, moving to my bachelor's, master's, and PhD in electrical computer engineering. So moving to an engineering school
Right.
really was marrying
Right.
my two sides of academic advising and engineering. But I did worry that I would be losing some things by moving to a bigger institution that I actually didn't end up losing. And that is the high touch undergraduate experience, the dedicated faculty who are really attuned to the undergraduate experience. I really thought that that would be eroded at Tufts, and it really is not. The faculty are extremely undergraduate focused, and it kind of echoes back to my remarks about being a Goldilocks school and being
Hmm.
kind of the right size. It does kind of fit, if you will, in between a big research R1 university with tens of thousands of students and then a small college. It kind of hits that sweet spot where there are the benefits of a research university, but there are also still many of the benefits of a smaller college and institution. And I think that is, for me, key for why Tufts has such a high retention rate and graduates our students so successfully.
Well, I couldn't agree more. You're definitely attuned to the undergraduate experience and absolutely attributes to that 96% retention rate, which I believe the national average is somewhere around 68, 69%. So it really is astonishing when you look at that number. So, what would you say are some recent developments or exciting initiatives at Tufts that you think prospective students and their families should know about?
Yeah, so there's so much exciting going on at
Hmm.
Tufts. Some that your prospective students and families should know about that are not brand new, and some that are brand new. Some that are not brand new, students who are interested in civic engagement, which is one of Tufts' hallmark pillars, if you will, of its mission, being civically engaged with the Tisch College of Civic Engagement as an example. We also have the Center for Engineering Education Outreach, which is a CEEO. Don't quote me, but it might be 25 plus years old. It's been around for a few decades, and it's the first of its kind, as far as I'm aware, in the U.S. And it's actually at least at one point during my time at Tufts, the largest employer at Tufts. So this is where students can go, a student employer, largest student
Hmm.
employer at Tufts, and it's a place that students can go and go into the local schools and teach engineering to our local communities, as an example. And high school teachers, maybe from your high school, call and get guidance from the CEEO when they're thinking about implementing engineering in their classroom, as one example. I
Great.
mentioned Tisch College. That is a phenomenal resource, funds students to do civic work. If a student gets an internship or a job that is not paying well, they can apply for funding to give back to the community. These would obviously be civically oriented jobs or internships, not just any job or internship. There's the X College, which is, I want to say 40 or 50 years old at this point,
Hmm.
which is if you will, a place that cool curricular ideas are tried out. The film and media studies major was born out of the X College. And these courses are taught by visiting experts, perhaps politicians, perhaps there's a food media class, which is taught by a local um, uh, individual who does food network,
Hmm.
programs and the like. As examples, students can teach these courses too. You can teach a course on growing up at Hogwarts, for instance. And so that's a super cool place. But these are all longstanding things. With respect to the School of Engineering and new initiatives, we do have a pilot co op program that several of our departments are engaged in, and we hope to expand it to more. Right now, I believe it's limited to BME, biomedical engineering. Sorry,
Hmm.
I'm using acronyms, computer science, and mechanical engineering at the moment, but we hope to expand that. We also have a brand new building which houses the Gordon Institute. I mentioned that earlier. And there are a slew of opportunities for entrepreneurship and combining engineering and business leadership that I encourage families to check out. And I guess one other thing I'll highlight is that when I came to Tufts in June of 2016, I immediately read the end of the year student surveys because they had just come out. And I read the first year, I read all years, but when I was reading the first year student surveys, I noted that there were a large percentage of students, engineers, who hope to study abroad, almost 60%.
Hmm. Wow.
And while 50% of students in the School of Arts and Sciences studied abroad, only 4% of engineers studied abroad.
Hmm.
And so I have spent my last 9 years working really hard to create new pathways to global opportunities for engineers. We actually hired maybe 6 or 7 years ago a brand new director of what's called Tufts Global Education. She came from MIT, and she has been an extraordinary partner with us in creating new pathways for students to study abroad. And I don't know the statistic right now, but we are on our way. We're not at 57%, but we're on our way. I'm guessing it's probably a third of engineers now study abroad. So that's super exciting. And we do have a couple new programs that are particularly exciting. One over the summer in Pavia, which is about data science at the University of Pavia. And we have some new partners. Tufts has 10 footprints worldwide. They're called Tufts In programs. And we have folded partners into those programs. In other words, in Paris, for instance, we always had a program, but we never had engineering offerings. Now we have a Centre Suplec, which is under the Tufts in Paris umbrella that offers programs in engineering for our students. So we're doing that in other locations as well. So there's a lot going on in the School of Engineering. It's a fabulous place.
Well, there's definitely a lot going on. You talk a lot about your different pathways. You talk a lot about the opportunities that students have to study abroad. And listening to you, it makes me feel like Tufts is very mindful of giving students, obviously, the best academic experience during that time at Tufts University. But again, providing all of these different experiences, for example, studying abroad, so that you're also preparing them for life after graduation, right? So that they're more worldly and hopefully continue to be very successful. Now, I know, Dr. Stephan, that you're the Dean of Academic Advising and Undergraduate Studies, of course, in that beautiful School of Engineering at Tufts University. But I was curious a little bit about the holistic admissions process. So I know that Tufts, of course, practices that holistic admissions process, but can you explain how this approach is applied and what makes a strong candidate stand out at Tufts University?
Right. So, holistic admissions, in general, holistic admissions means that there's no one factor that is going to determine a student's admission to an institution. The student's application materials are viewed as a whole, comprehensively, with attention to all the different parts of the student to get a really deep understanding of the student. The materials, your listeners are probably well aware, can include a whole range of things, such as test scores, such as grade, the academic rigor of the high school program, the activities that they've engaged in, their references, their essays. All of these things are going to be considered. My strong advice to students who are applying to college, not just Tufts, is that they be very mindful about the institution to which they're applying and learn deeply about that institution so that when they prepare their materials that they do have some control over, such as their essays, for instance, they really show that they've understood the institution and they understand themselves, and that those are a really good fit, or a deep fit, as I like to say. And at Tufts, as I mentioned earlier, Tufts, part of its mission, part of its identity is educating civically minded students, students who are civically engaged. So if you're a high school student applying to Tufts and you are civically engaged, you have given time to your communities, you have performed community service. This is definitely something that you should highlight. And I also mentioned earlier the CEEO, that's another example, the Center for Engineering Education Outreach. So when you see these types of things at an institution, you should highlight the ways in which you sync up with them, they resonate with you. And that's one example. And it's not specific to engineering. Of course, for the School of Engineering, you want to have strong math, strong science. But to think about it within the context of what would you do with it, that math and science?
Right.
How would you better the world? That's the
hmm
type of engineer that I see at Tufts all the time.
That's awesome that you mentioned that, because a lot of times we focus so much on the academics, but if you could also express in that holistic application review what you would do, for example, with those math skills or what have you, I think that would help a student stand out in, what frankly is a very competitive application review process. So I know that you talked about there's no one factor, and you mentioned, of course, grades, test scores, references, essays, and so much more, but How important would you say are extracurricular activities, research experience, and internships in the admissions review process for prospective students?
Mhm. Well, I think students need to stand out for one reason or another. There's no checklist. There's no checklist. If
Hmm.
I do A, B, C, D, I'm going to be admitted, or these are the five things I have to do to be considered. It's not the way it works. Students do have to stand out for one reason or another, and of course, strong grades, strong test scores, strong rigor are going to give a student an opportunity to be considered, but that's not enough. So what is going to help a student stand out beyond that? And that's the
Hmm.
question. And oftentimes it's things that other students don't, won't, or can't do, if you will. So let me provide an example. And at this point, let me just as a side note share. So as context for this example, that I do have a private business where I help high school students apply to college. That's not why I'm here today. I'm here with in my role as dean
Hmm.
of academic advising and undergraduate studies for the School of Engineering. And it's also important to note here that I have no role on the board of admissions at Tufts, none whatsoever, and a
Hmm.
formal conflict of interest agreement in place with Tufts to
Hmm.
do my college admissions counseling. But the reason why I bring it up right now is because I can share an example of
Great.
what a student, and by the way, this student did not apply to Tufts and is not at
Hmm.
Tufts. So she applied early decision to Northwestern, and where she's studying computer science as a senior right now. And
Great.
yeah, so it has nothing to do with Tufts, but it provides an illustrative example of something that an engineering student don't, won't, or may not otherwise do. So she built an American Ninja Warrior styled obstacle course in her backyard.
Oh, wow.
I'll just let that
That's
sit with
different.
I'll just let that sit with listeners. And she wrote her admissions essay about the opening was something like, when I was little, I begged my parents to have replace our staircase to go upstairs with monkey bars. Right, that's
Hmm.
like part of the opening, and I didn't do it as eloquently as she did. But then she goes on to talk about how she later, as a young adult in high school, built this obstacle course in her backyard because she felt, and it was an essay about building, but it was also an essay sort of philosophical about how important it is for adults to play and why do we outgrow playgrounds.
Hmm.
And she had a vision of having, she said something, there's some line in her essay like no playground is respectable without monkey bars, right? She was interested in monkey bars, and she wanted them to be variable spaced so that adults or younger, people of different sizes could enjoy and access her apparatus. And so she had this vision of having variable spaced monkey bars, and she was struggling to bring that to fruition because as she created channels, and as she dropped the monkey bars in the channels, the rods, then when she went across it, they would rotate, right? They wouldn't stay stable. And that was
Hmm.
really frustrating because that's not the way a monkey bar should work. So her father said to her at one point, I don't, I think you should give up on this. I think you should just hammer in the bars. And she was like, no. And she talked about how she approached the problem. And she came up with the most elegantly simple solution, which is she took each rod and she nailed to the top of the rod a little piece of wood, flat piece of wood, which would
Hmm.
prevent the rod from rotating when the person went across the monkey bars, and you could pick them up and drop them. Elegant, beautiful. She demonstrated creative problem solving, and it was cool, right? This is cool. And she
Absolutely.
also was reflective. She talked about how philosophically it connected to other ideas. She also talked about this during COVID, how the apparatus allowed her to build community because they could be outside where it was safe. She actually put an extension on the apparatus with lights so that she and her friends could be outside at night talking during COVID. So it was just this beautiful essay. And that's not something that most students do, right? That's unusual. So
Right.
there's no, you know, students are creative, interesting people, and they should just trust that. And they should be their best. It sounds kind of corny and cliche, but they should just be their best self, right? They should be curious, be creative, and let that shine. And places that value who they are going to accept them, right?
I totally agree. And I really love that example because it points to the fact that if you're trying to be like every other student that was accepted to Tufts University, you're not going to stand out in the process, right? So it's very important, for example, in this case where she spoke about an approach that she took to a problem, sharing how She solved it, her insights, her thought process, her reflections, and really gave insight into the type of person she is, right? That really made her stand out in the process. And I'm glad to hear that, she's a senior there now at Northwestern, doing really well. But again, it's an example of stop trying to think of, okay, if I'm applying to Tufts University, what does Tufts University want to hear? Talk
Exactly.
about yourself and how, you are different, because if you sound like everyone else, you're not necessarily giving yourself the best chance of being admitted because of your unique qualities. Would you agree with that, Dr. Stephen?
Absolutely. I tell my students their best chances of admission are through an authentic application.
Right.
Period. Full stop.
Right, right. I totally agree. And, we've covered so much, but I was curious to come back to something about job placement. Dr. Stephen, how does Tufts support the engineering students in, of course, securing internships, co-op experience, and job placement after graduation? And are there any unique resources available to them?
hmm Yeah. We have a career center, a robust career center. We have dedicated staff who are focused on the School of Engineering and help engineering students, with a whole range of activities, whether it be preparing their resumes, job fairs, networking with alums, assessment exercises to help them discern their major. There's just a robust set of resources that we have available for students. We also have the co-op program, which I mentioned earlier. That's a valuable resource. Yeah, so there's a lot on Tufts campus to support students towards their career development.
Oh, that totally is something for everyone. And Dr. Stephen, looking ahead, what are some of the strategic goals or visions you have for the School of Engineering over the next few years? And how do you see these influencing the student experience?
hmm It's really interesting you asked that, John, because after having reported to a dean of undergraduate education for 6 years, on September 1st, I have a new boss. And
Great,
so, we're partnering. Yeah, he's fabulous and I'm thrilled. And we're partnering together on that question. And so I'm in
great.
part going to take a pass on that. But as
Okay,
a little teaser, I think that I would not be surprised if we see more experiential options for our
great.
students, but that is very high level at this moment, and I'm not exactly sure what form that's going to take. Also, study abroad. I mentioned that earlier. We're
Hmm.
going to continue to develop global experiences for our students.
That's fantastic. And this has been a phenomenal conversation, Dr. Stephen. I can't thank you enough. Before I get to the last question, I always like to ask, is there a question that I simply didn't ask today or a topic that I didn't bring up that you'd like to share with us now?
I don't think so. I don't think so, actually. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and your questions are very comprehensive, and I hope I've given you comprehensive answers. So I
You
think I
definitely
think you've
did.
done a great job. Yeah, I think we've done a great job.
You did an awesome job. I'm just asking questions. You're doing an awesome job
Yeah.
giving insights to so many students and their families in terms of what Tufts University has to offer. And like I said, this has been phenomenal. You're great. Unfortunately, it does bring us to that last question, which always is, what are your top three pieces of advice that you would provide students and their families getting ready for the college admissions process?
Well, number one, trust experts. Don't trust non-experts. Don't ask your neighbor. Don't and things have changed since we all I might be a little older than some of your listeners, but still things have changed since the time we all applied to college and university. Um, and so don't ask your neighbor, ask random people. You definitely want to be turning to the resources at your high school. There are a lot of online resources from experts. Some people find it valuable to get further support or assistance. It depends on the family and what they have available to them. But make sure you're trusting experts, number one. Number two, I would say embrace this journey as an exciting journey and not a stressful, overwhelming journey. It doesn't have to be stressful and overwhelming. There are over 3,000 colleges and universities in the United States, and there's also beyond that in the world, of course, as well. But if we're just talking about the US, so many options. And there are amazing places that you may not have heard of that are not necessarily the most highly ranked, the sparkliest, the most highly selective. And so my second piece of advice is to be open to options and possibilities, and to not anchor on to rankings and metrics that really have nothing to do with what your child's experience would be on a campus. And that leads me to my third piece of advice, which is that there's a lot of research out there that shows that what happens in college is more important than where the student goes to college in terms of the school's ranking or reputation. And by that I mean, there are multiple studies that I could cite, but one in particular is a 2015 Gallup-Purdue Index poll, which surveyed 30,000 adults to see, what could be learned about the college experiences of those who are successful in the most broad sense, not just successful professionally, but living whole, healthy lives, engaged with
Hmm.
their communities. As an example, healthy physically, emotionally, etc. And they found that there were 6 experiences strongly connected or linked to lifelong success. And they are a professor who made the student excited to learn, a professor who cared about the student as an individual, a mentor, either a professor or staff member like myself, who encouraged the student to pursue their dreams, job or internship related to their studies, deep engagement with a project over time, maybe a thesis or a capstone, and deep engagement with extracurricular activities. There are other studies that reinforce those findings. NESE is one. And again, we've talked about many of these experiences today, John. Study abroad is an impactful experience. So my last piece of advice is, you notice rankings is not on that list, right? So my last piece of advice is to be really doing deep research on schools to really understand what would your child experience at that school once they get in.
Right.
Getting in is just the beginning. There's a lot that happens after they get in, and look for the potential for those impactful experiences, relationships with faculty, extracurricular activities, jobs, internships, impactful experiences like study abroad or theses as an example. So, and be open-minded to the schools that offer that. It may be that a very highly ranked school does offer that for your student, but it may be not, and if one does, it's not because it's highly ranked, it's because of those other factors.
Well, those are tremendous factors that you brought up. And, I always put the Office of Undergraduate Admissions in the show notes. But Dr. Stephan, if there are any resources that you want me to link in the show notes so that the parents and students can see them, please provide them to me. You mentioned so many different studies. So hopefully, we could provide some of those links for families. And again, the students getting ready for the college admissions process. This was awesome. You are awesome, Dr. Stephan. I do hope to have you again. Thank you so much for your time, your insight, and your expertise today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a lot of fun, John. Thank you for the opportunity. I would love to come back. Just let me know how I can be helpful,
Absolutely.
okay?
Absolutely. And one last thing to say to everyone out there, good luck with the college search. Take care all, and best wishes. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend. And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The CAP.